My Licorice is Alive with Ginza Samba by Vince Guaraldi and Tjader. It's a jazzy little culture cross between Japan and Brazil, and what you get is a very hip synthesis that became one of the anthems of the West Coast cool sound. My two favorite recordings are with Tjader on vibes and Stan Getz breaking it down genius-wise on his sax in 1958. The other version of note is with Vince Guaraldi. So, folks, there you have it, my little version of Ginza Samba. Dig it or don't. So, welcome, folks, once again to another installment of Rebel Without Applause, coming to you from the Wood of the Holly, right here under the sign in the enchanted land of law. I'm here with in my movie studio apartment, trying to break it down, jazz-wise, joke-wise, and otherwise. And this afternoon, I have a very special guest. You can hear her in the background. She is none other than Jaime Black. Jaime is, she goes by many names. She's a singer, as you can hear, a talented musician, known throughout the internet and our local area as the Priestess of Silver Lake. And she kindly has offered herself up and all her wisdom to share with me right here in the confines of my movie studio apartment. Bravo. Very beautiful, Jaime. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm truly honored to be here.
You are.
Yeah.
Well, full disclosure, you've been in this little enclosure for many years. You were a former resident here of Crotona.
That's true.
And this is a homecoming of sort. Just for my listeners, Jaime, I've known you from afar. We've had a few conversations over the years. I have to admit that I've always been charmed by you and thought that you were, very lovely. And what would it take to get to know this really interesting person? And so I'm grateful that I bumped into you at Gelson's. We had this cool conversation. And, one of the things just off the bat that I find incredibly appealing about you is that you're that rare self-invented person. You have created yourself in a really beautiful and creative and seemingly entrepreneurial way. So tell me, just as a prelude to what's going on, what was I hearing and what were you singing?
That's just very intuitive. I was singing and playing through a frame drum, also known as a priestess drum, and it's part of this reawakening of feminine power and remembering also past lives and tribes, the way that we were as women together in tribes and the way that we were with music. And this is something that we do in circle. There's this, some of you may have heard or not, but it's something that you could definitely look up. This women's circle, women sitting in circle and red tents and all of these things. It's a reclaiming of the energy within, and it can apply for everyone, but this is just definitely something that is happening in the women's circles and all of that. So that particular piece is something that when I've been a musician for a really long time and always really wanted to play the drum. My father's a drummer actually, but just never had one. So a couple years ago, I had him get me a frame drum. And so, but I was so nervous, just still kind of unsure about it. And so I brought it to Circle, and I am very intuitive, just kind of in general. I let things flow through me. So I just kind of closed my eyes and played the drum, and that melody came through. So I used that melody to begin things. The ceremonies that I lead, we'll do it. We'll do it in the women's circle. And so I thought it was appropriate for.
And in these circles, does everybody participate? Is it a group choral kind of thing? Is it a fugue, or are you leading it, or how does it generally work?
Well, I would be so happy for everyone to just sing, join in, but also it's one of the reasons why I do it in circle is there's so much resistance to sharing voice
Right.
with most people, especially women. So people don't just like sing along. So the way that those circles work is you generally have someone who is leading it. It's very group participatory. That's the point, is that there is a lot of sharing, and we go around in the circle and everybody gets a chance to share. There's a lot of like opening up and letting go and connecting and things that happen. And so the way that I do it is I'll have just kind of like a general structure of things that I want to happen in the circle. And I use the things that I use in like life coaching and ritual and also with the music. And so I just kind of, I guide it in that way.
Well, one of the things that I like about that is in our culture, the music muse is only reserved for the talented few, and the rest of us are just obligated to listen and applaud. When in fact, I think the history of music for humanity was it's really an invitation for everybody to participate and for everybody to sing. And I just remember as a kid, oh, I can't sing, I have a terrible voice. I don't have that little fairy dust of talent on me. And it was only years later where I picked up the clarinet and I started practicing that I felt like I could participate in music. And it was like hugely healing for me.
Yes. Well, music is so healing for us. So something that I'd say, we each have an instrument. It's our body. And the sound that comes out of you, it has a lot to do with your body and the shape of it, your head, like how the sound is resonating inside of your skull, your neck, your vocal cords, all of that. Now you can learn how to use those correctly so that you could use them correctly and incorrectly. And then there's people who have natural gifts of being able to like hear pitch and all of that, but those things can be learned. So something I say to people all the time is the sounds that your instrument makes are actually the ones that heal your own body. And so because it's not part of this culture, and there's all this judgment about doing things perfectly, we don't grow up, most of us, right, just in the general, we don't grow up using our voices, we don't grow up singing together, we don't grow up playing drums. And so as we go into adulthood and we haven't done these things, even if we really want to, I have a voice. I'm a natural singer, and it was my favorite thing always to do. And it took me until I was 29 to sing in front of people. I was so scared.
Were you discouraged? Were you scarred in some way as a kid?
No. I always, if there ever was anyone that heard me, and especially my mom, I received compliments and everything, but I was afraid. I was afraid. I didn't have the practice of releasing the sound. And that's the thing for so many things. It's just we haven't practiced doing it. So in my circles, I always have people ohm at the very least in the end. Ohming is great for all of us to do together because so many people can do it together, and people can be off key and in key and whatever. But what's happening is since we're not quote unquote singing, we're not thinking of trying to make it pretty. We're just creating the sound and the vibration together, and everybody can feel that.
Right.
And it's powerful for our bodies to feel it. We are our own sound bowl.
Well, I kind of feel like there's a part of my brain, and whatever I do, whether it's writing or the clarinet, that's sitting in judgment. It's the critic guys. I'm literally writing reviews as I play my clarinet or write a script. It's like, and the critical faculty is actually does not enhance the creative faculty. They're two different animals. As a matter of fact, the critical faculty can be very inhibiting of the creative faculty. So I try and throw that away. And what you're saying about the shape of your head, it's like this instrument here, my clarinet, which is a big part of my life. Well, it's that instrument and this body. So it's really one instrument, me plus the clarinet, because I'm the bellows and a lot of other things. So yeah, that's a cool point. Now, is there a historical precedent to this? Is there something that, this harkens back to in ancient times?
I don't have all the specifics because it's not my area of study. So things that I have heard are that women used to be the ones that were the drummers. There is a woman named Lane Redmond that wrote a book called When the Women Were Drummers. And she actually was starting to learn the drum by a male teacher. I'm going to forget his name, but he was Hamza Al-Jul, I think is his name. And he brought this frame drum kind of into current music. And she started looking in history and looking and finding all these old statues of women that were holding drums. And she got really it just piqued her interest, and she started studying. And so what she realized were like women were in tribes and cultures back then were leading ceremony. They were the drummers. But in the times where the power was being taken away from the women, they were no longer allowed to drum. They were no longer allowed to be in power positions. They were not allowed to drum. They were not allowed to be involved in the medicine. And that was just,
And is this coincidental with, let's say, the rise of Christianity in
well,
Europe?
I would assume so. Yes. And so something that so many people don't know is that there were like 10 million women or even more that they murdered in over 100-year period of time, sanctioned by the church. It was okay that they were shaving, chopping up, drowning, hanging, beating, killing women. And, really this was, one religious organization wanting to take over the power that existed before then. So, who knows about who was out of control with power? Power is a thing that gets out of control. But there was this movement that they destroyed all of the goddess temples and they built churches on top of them. They killed all of the women that had spiritual knowledge, any kind of power. They took like intuition away from us, right? Saying that it was wrong and that you need to go to this church and talk to this person in power over here at this organization to have any kind of idea of the truth of what's going on or to be able to talk to spirit or God or whatever it was called. So absolutely, millions and millions of women were murdered. So a lot of the history was also removed.
Right. It's
well.
the tyranny of paternity. Famously, we have the witch trials. We have the Putin's vice president, or the what I call the PVP, or the billionaire brat boy. They're all part of this continuum to crush. What do you think that's about? Do you think it's like fear of sex or something like what do you think's the source of that terror inside the male psyche that would provoke that kind of response?
I think there's a lot of mystery in the power that women have, and maybe power, I mean more maybe spiritual connection. So, women are psychic and there's a reason for it. Women, it doesn't mean that men are not psychic. We all have psychic abilities. This is also an instrument that we use. We're all spirit, but women grow a child inside their body. So there's some things going on with women. Her physical body is actually a portal. It's actually a connection point between spirit and the physical world. And she has to be psychic because she can sense what's going on with her child inside as it's growing. And then she needs to be able to sense what is happening with that child when it comes outside of her body in the very beginning. I mean, we hear these things about women. They know what is going on with their child all the time. They can hear that child in their sleep. They know when the child is awake and it needs to feed, and the body becomes so in tune. So whether it's how psychic that woman actually is outside of this experience that she's having with her child, their bodies are connected. They're totally in tune. And so, of course, it's not just physical. There's all other aspects inside of our physical body. So the woman has these abilities. As a woman myself, who is quite psychic, experiences that I've had with connecting my body with certain people in this lifetime, that the information that I have access to about them, I can feel them, I can hear them, even more so with somebody who's my friend or than somebody who I've had physical connection with. So if there's a man that doesn't have those abilities inside of himself, maybe he doesn't like that. Maybe there's a threat to that. For sure, for a organization that is trying to have power over people, power over government, they don't want there to be these beings out there that talk to God, that talk to spirit, that can heal you with plants. Everything about just the healing operations of women back in the day were just in contradiction to what the church was trying to do. So I don't know what to say. We have so much. There's so much evidence. There's so much for us to look at what they did to people, how they created all of this fear and shame, just personal shame inside one's own body about sexual desire and all of that, right? They created so much fear and shame in a person in general. And in order to do that, they had to have all this control. They had to be the ones that were the spiritual answer and all of that. So like I said, who knows what they were doing before, but we can see what happened with the church.
One of the really incredible experiences I had last year was I performed Hamlet as a podcast in 5 parts and also Othello. But Ophelia is this feeling creature of incredible sensitivity and intuition about the world around her. And she loves Hamlet, but what's demanded of her from her brother, her father, and her society is absolute obedience. And that her total value, in the same with Desdemona in Othello, is the core value that's really demanded of these spirit creatures, these beautiful female, these women, these princesses within these two plays, is the core value is obedience and fealty to their male masters. And in both instances, in both plays, it results in her destruction and death. And so these themes, they echo through our history and through our literature, and right up to our current moment. Our current politics is fraught with a male tyrant who wants to abuse and subjugate and humiliate women. So these things, they're just these strains in our society. They don't really go away, but they're always in conflict. How did you come to these kind of awarenesses?
I'm very passionate about these things. I can say that before I even knew anything about what I believe in or any of that, I remember that they burned me. I have past life memories. I remember that they burned me. I was young. I didn't grow up going to church. I have been to church really only like a handful, maybe two in my life, really visiting other people's churches. We went a couple times when I was young. My mother loves church. She's now Catholic, or Catholic again. She loves all of that. And she loves the angels, and she loves to be in a church and the singing and all of that. And that's how she connects spiritually. I always really didn't like it. I always felt like I had to be really protective of myself, but I just can remember, because, I'm a Scorpio. My birthday is next to Halloween. I've always been into the witchy, the dark stuff. I've always been into that. But even before I even knew what I was into, there's a lot of parts about it to be into. There's a lot of things to study. There's a lot of history to know. But I knew that there was something about them taking my freedom away from me. And I think it's kind of amazing to know those things. But if you believe in past lives, and having access to those memories doesn't come just because we're older. So it's just information that I have acquired over time, and things that just make clear sense to me, where I'm like, I may have read this, or I heard this person say something, or I studied this, or remembered this, and it's just kind of like a combination of all of that. I also remember being very young and having gone to church groups and all that, probably during the time we were all preteens, and really listening to all the horrible things that they were saying about sexuality, about masturbation, about how, it's wrong. And, I'm not actually somebody who's really focused on sex and sexual energy. There's people who are into that. That's not even something that I talk about a lot. But even as young as I was thinking, I'm like, it's so wrong that they're teaching people that their bodies are wrong, that their desires are wrong. We're not talking about taking advantage of someone or over sexualizing things we're not talking about any of that. We're just talking about your own personal experience with what is natural in your body and what's healthy and healing for your body anyway. And that was one of the places that I was just like, this is just, it's so wrong. And I think I'm a voice for some of this anyway. I mean, this is something that I talk to a lot of women about in the world of working with women and women's circles. There's something called a sister wound. There's something called a mother wound, the father wound. This is in psychology. There's the sister wound. There's something that is called a witch wound. And I don't know who came up with that. It might have been Lisa Lister. She wrote a book called Witch and a few other ones. I went to one of her circles and she was talking about this. And she took us into not a full-on past life regression, but that idea where she's playing the drum and we're kind of going into a meditative state. And we are looking for a sensory experience for what happened to us during those days. And I actually had an experience of feeling like somebody hung me. That wasn't a memory that I had. It always kind of been about fire. And then just realizing that when it's possible that they did this over a long period of time. There's multiple lives, there's multiple experiences that many of us have had being persecuted as women.
That precedes our own existence, basically.
Yes.
So you're not necessarily the victim of serious trauma within your own life, but you are a vessel for feeling what has preceded you. I think there's some serious truth to that. For example, I think most African Americans are still traumatized by slavery and Jim Crow, even if in fact they weren't victims of segregation or slavery because they're living in this moment. But that deep trauma over centuries, not even generations, is still in them. And I had this experience a couple of years ago. I was in Florence, and it was very hot. And I was with this lady friend, and she was showing me some of the cathedrals, and it was really beautiful. But I was so thirsty. And so we said, well, let's go up to the top of this hotel and get a drink. So we get in the elevator, and I press the button, and the door closes, and it doesn't move, and we're stuck. And it's getting hotter and hotter, and I'm really thirsty. And all I could think of was I'm in a gas chamber in Europe. Like I literally felt like, okay, is this a memory? And my mother was born in Berlin. She's a refugee from Hitler. And I was stuck in this elevator. And I just remember like having a memory that preceded my own life. Fortunately, the elevator opened. Somebody came, made a cell phone call, and it was okay. But it made me ruminate about that possibility that we actually carry the trauma and whatever these things are that have preceded us.
It can be on a physical level and it can be on a spiritual level. So you can have a spiritual lineage that you reincarnate in maybe a certain family line, a certain like group of people, but also in your own body, the genes genetically, what we are carrying, we're carrying it down our family lineage in this lifetime. So if you can look at this family lineage that you're part of and what country you're from and what nationality you are, religion, all of those, it's coming down. And so I say this to people about the witch trials. I'm like, someone absolutely for sure in your line, because of how many people that they killed, absolutely there was a woman in your family that was killed because of this. And I talk about that in an extent of talking about something else, a lot of the separation and judgment in between women. A lot of times in a women's circle, we're sitting in a circle of women, and it's the first time. There's always somebody who this is the first time that they've ever sat in a group of women together, and that's scary for them. Right. Just energetically, it's powerful, but can be very uncomfortable, and there's a lot of mistrust. And so I explain this a lot to women. I'm like, there's a reason why women don't trust each other. It's also created in our society and in the religion and all of that, and all this shame around women and how they're evil and Eve and all of that. It's nonsense. But if you were a woman that had children in a family and they wanted someone that was near you to die, they might threaten that they were going to kill you, and then your children are going to be left without their mother. But if you could just turn her in, if you could just say that she's a witch, and she might be your sister, and she might be your best friend, and she might be your neighbor. And so think about that. The choices that women were forced into making, are you turning on her? They're going to kill her anyway. Mm-hmm. So are you going to get killed with her? And then are you choosing for your children to watch their mother die or not have a child? So there were decisions that women had to make back in the day that were against their own kind, were against their friends and their family members. And I believe that is what is getting healed now with the women's circles, with women sitting together. Men want to be part of these circles too, and that's a whole other thing.
How do I get in?
Yeah. Well, and there
available.
Are men's groups, besides that maybe just being excited about, what are these women doing? Yeah. Men are like, well, we want to have it too. And there are men that are creating these things. They are creating these retreats and these men's groups, and
sure.
And it's awesome. Yeah. It's awesome. We don't have these rites of passage in this culture anyway, where we are getting together and we're sharing old ways and secrets from our families or from our friends, or, it's really such an amazing experience. But what's men that want to be part of these circles, and what I say to them is well, let's create more. I definitely do more group things now that everybody can be part of, but there is a really important piece that's happening with women inside of these women's circles that is not about men not being able to come as much as it's about the women being able to sit with each other and processing the fear that's there and the boundaries that are there and the mistrust that's there. And then when you can get through all of that, they can get into this personal healing about accepting yourself as a woman and honoring yourself as a woman. And so, that's happening with the women, and the women are mothers. So it's really powerful for this to be happening to all of the women that are alive on the planet, however old they are, because it's something that then just by them experiencing this and learning these things and self-acceptance, it's just going to get transferred down to their families.
Now, it's also part of the Jamie Black experience. It's a big experience because I've
to talk about all this stuff.
Well, no. First of all, we got the women's circles, and we have the generational healing, and I'm particularly attracted to the idea of the collective of everybody being able to sing, and then it's not just, oh, we're going to watch Madonna sing, and we're all going to listen and worship. I like the collective where we're all invited to participate. I think that's a better model for the future, not to discourage performers, but the fact that there's room for people to participate. I remember as a kid, there was a TV show called Sing Along with Mitch, where a little guy would lead people to sing. And Americans would sing at their television set all across the country. So it wasn't so much an invitation to listen as it was an invitation to sing and participate. I think that's probably very healthy. And I think that's also, there's a deeper need for that in our culture to invite people to participate. And it's not just for the talented few. And of course, we live in Hollywood, where it's all about velvet ropes and the talented few. So I like this open invitation to participate. I think it runs right to a healthier place. Now, you're also into the realm of the tarot cards. Yes. And I've never had anything read. I don't discount it. I don't have really a deep opinion about it. I was just curious, well, how did you get into that, and talk about how that sort of relates to the whole Jamie Black Priestess experience?
Okay. I'll start by saying there are so many things to say about tarot, but I'll talk about how I got into it. There's a whole story that goes with it. So I'll just say that growing up, I thought that I wasn't into astrology. And anytime there were psychics around that were like, I need to tell you about your future, I was really rude and dismissive about it. And
skeptical.
And really judgmental. I mean, and the truth is, I didn't know anything about any of that. I'm a Scorpio. I've been like very judgmental and very opinionated and all of that in my young life. What I know now is it was all the things that I didn't know about. I would just had some opinion about it, and I was really judgmental about it. So I probably had heard that information from someone else. Also, maybe like my dad. My dad's an Aquarius. He's not very quote unquote spiritual. He doesn't believe in all this extra. He believes in what is here and what is now and what is real, but he actually has me read his tarot cards nowadays. So,
now I just want to backtrack because the fathers, they are very important in putting that imprint on their daughters' psychology, how they're going to relate to men in the future, whether as lovers, friends, whatever. So I'm trying to get a picture through your father of whatever universe that you escaped or rebelled from. Or embraced, for that matter.
Well, I'm very rebellious, and I am still very rebellious. You can see it in my astrology. It's even if it's something that I've created myself, I'll eventually rebel from it. So my dad, he's still with us. I had an amazing father. I was the first child, so he taught me to be just this powerful, I can do anything. It doesn't matter if I'm a female. Like, don't ever let anybody tell me that I can't do it. Don't ever let anybody tell me the way that it is going to be for me. So he taught me to be like very independent. He empowered me. I really liked to say, I can't do this and that. And his just answer would be like, I can't, never did anything. Like, you can absolutely do it. And so I had a very healthy relationship with him. Also, a lot of rebelling and because that's the thing. He taught me not to listen to anyone else. He taught me to listen to my intuition and listen to my own inner voice. And then, of course, as my father proceeded to try to tell me how to do everything in my life, and then I really rebelled against that. But he allowed me the room, and he allowed me my own opinion, even if there was a disagreement. So I'm really grateful for him for that. But he he wanted me to be whatever it is that I wanted. I was really about the intellect when I was younger, and I'm also a fighter. So I was going to be a lawyer, and I was going to be a scientist of all these various different things. And that's what he wanted for me. And then I started playing the flute when I was in 4th grade, and then he wanted me to play music professionally. And so I think the way that I rebelled against my father is that he just always has had such high hopes, and it doesn't so much feel like an expectation as more as he is just like, you can be anything. And so anytime I say I want to do anything, he's like, oh, you're going to be like so successful. And my daughter, all of this. And I'm like, can you just I don't want to be famous. I don't want to be these things. Like what I want is I want it to matter. I want it to be mine. I want it to be smaller. I don't want it to be so big. I don't want to be in the light, like as in a spotlight on show. I want to be doing what I'm doing because it matters to me. So that, I think only in the past few years have I finally stopped rebelling, because I've also been able to see in my life like how I've kept myself small. There's lots of things that I do that cause me to be very in the public eye of the people around. I get on the stage and I play music and I teach all of that, but I've just kind of kept it really small. And so it's funny, maybe rebelling against his idea of how I'm going to be, so amazing at everything, and being like, I don't want to be against anybody else's. I don't want to be up for judgment, but that just is the way that it goes. But I don't care what anybody else thinks about it. I just want to do my own thing. So anyway, we got off. We were talking about tarot.
That's right. Well, we did a sidetrack to Dad, and then we looped back to tarot.
Yeah.
But they're all related.
Oh, yeah. Well, so I'll also just say, too, I'm a martial artist.
And I wanted to get into that, too, because I'm just going to say, as I look at you and I read about you and I feel you're I find that there's this Amazon thing within you as well.
Yeah.
There's this warrior woman. And so that there's the warrior and the spirituality and the creativity and this sense of past injustices. And just speaking as just Bill, I find that really attractive. Okay, the whole package of that multidimensional person in you is really cool. So that there's this warrior person I'm feeling as well.
Well, I appreciate that reflection. I'm a fighter. For anyone who knows astrology, my Mars is in Scorpio, and so is my sun. My Mars is conjunct my sun. So Mars is the planet of war, right? Martial arts. Right. It is, it's an energy that makes you a really good starter. You're a really good initiator. You have a lot of drive, and it makes you also fearless. And so we see this energy as it's a driving force, and it's a positive energy, regardless of how reckless it can be. If you think about fire, it moves, and it's positive the direction that it moves in. So I've just very much had this energy in my life. It started with my brother, and then my dad got involved. And I think I was doing gymnastics and ballet, and I would go to the martial arts class and watch them, and I was like, yeah, I'm totally in the wrong place. I need to be over here.
Now, was this karate or some version of it, or
it was taekwondo?
Taekwondo, okay.
And taekwondo is a very offensive sport. You actually don't really learn a lot of defense, even though there are spiritual components to it. Absolutely, that was not a big part of what we were learning. Very offensive, and really built up my ego, my flaming fire around me, and I became very physically strong. I did it young, so I could beat the shit out of all the boys when I was younger. And my poor brother included. I was just asserting my dominance over them. And then of course puberty happened, and then they all got bigger and stronger than me. And then,
but you had that window of ass kicking.
You did. I could beat them all in arm wrestling, and I had no interest in being feminine. And a girl had this long hair, and I would just braid it, just get it out of my way. But other than that, I wanted to be just as equal to all the boys.
And is this in Santa Cruz?
No, this was in San Jose.
Okay.
So I did live in Santa Cruz for a short period of time. I went to high school there, but that was a whole other story. Really traumatic culture shock, not really a fun time in my life, but also really key for a lot of other things that ended up happening. I mean, I may not have moved to Los Angeles had I not been living in Santa Cruz and needed to get away from there so badly. So learning how to fight at a young age, learning how to be strong and powerful in my body, that's not a general thing that women are taught. And the girls that are maybe learning those things and doing some sports, maybe like basketball and volleyball and running, it's still not combative what it is that they're doing. So I grew up studying music. I started martial arts when I was in 2nd grade. I started music when I was in 4th grade. So it was like I had these foundations of my upbringing and really learning spirituality and magic. So I, talk about magic. I teach magic. That's when I started really to learn how to use my body and your will and your focus and your own energy that you have, and how strong and how powerful you are really is not dictated by the body that you have. It's dictated by your mind and how you use your energy and your force of will. So I learned how to be really powerful at a young age.
And you still are.
And I'm also in it again. So I took a break and I focused on yoga. So, that's so much more internal.
Right.
And really did yoga really seriously for about 15 years. And just in this past year, found a martial arts school down here. It's all women, which is super exciting for me because it was always me and all these dudes.
Right.
And so now it's me and all these women, and it's...
Are you kicking ass again? Are you dominating?
We're yes, but we're all doing it together.
Okay.
It's so great. And, I try to encourage women just to come because I'm teaching.
Oh, you're teaching now.
I'm teaching now as well on Fridays. And so I encourage all of my friends, my clients, just women that I meet everywhere. I'm like, just come. You don't have to be good at any of it already. The whole point is learning your body. When you move all the parts of your body, it's just all of your cells are awake. You have this energy, you have this fire and this movement. You're more present in your own body when you're just standing, when you're walking. That in itself is powerful. And that's different. Yoga, you get something like that as well too, because you're moving it. And so you feel the fluidness and you learn about your bones and maybe where you are in space and all of that. But it's elongating and stretching and breathing. So it's also very magical, and you're moving energy through your entire body and through your chakras, but you're not working with blasting energy. You're not working with focus and then driving energy through something that is there. So
which is martial arts.
Yeah.
And what's really interesting to me about the Jaime Black experience is that you're monetizing it, that your life is your creation. So whether it's the tarot or now I love tarot too. I generally get it at the Asian markets. I slice it up and I put it in grapeseed oil and then a little cinnamon powder and some powdered sugar. And it's so delicious, okay? Those and they're almost sliced as, taro, but the fruit, you get it. Have you ever had taro? It's fantastic.
No, you should have had some here.
I know. Well, I didn't think of it, but I did. I thought, well, no, you go to Shillong, the Thai market. They sell these big taro bulbous roots. And it's what poi is. Taro is what basically gave the Polynesians strength to paddle from Tahiti to Hawaii. It's a staple.
Interesting.
Right, taro.
Yeah.
It's a root. And anyway, I like to get it at the Thai market, slice it really thin, and make my little taro chips for breakfast every once in a while. They're really good.
That's really good.
But anyway, your life is your creation, and it seems like, based on our discussions and what I've seen online, it's also a very powerful entrepreneurial effort.
I'm really grateful that I'm getting to do all of this, but I had to make it happen and I had to dedicate myself to it. Living here in Los Angeles with all the other creative types, we wait tables, we bartend, we
Uber,
personal assist, yes. And so the rents are sky high. We have to work a lot and we have to make a lot of money just to get by here.
Not be in a tent 200 yards below
seriously.
us under a freeway overpass.
That's really, that's going on for a lot of people right now.
Right.
And so, there's sustaining normal life. And then if you have any dreams, aspirations, right, outside of that, which most of us here do, you have to work, you have to have a double life. You have to have a double, you have to have your work, your slave job, I call it. And then after that, then you have to come home and then be ready and fresh to start all over again on something else. And most people don't. It's exhausting. I know people that have been here 20 years and I've been hearing about their acting and I've never seen them do anything with it. And when I started recording music, touring music, I was still waitressing and making enough money that I could work a ton, save up my money, go on tour, come back totally broke every time and have to start all over again. But that was a little bit before the rent, like the rent's going sky high. I mean, it just got to the point where a few years ago, I was waitressing and I was making the same kind of money I was making 15 years prior. Yet the apartment that I used to live in was actually $1,000 more a month.
Right.
And so it made it so I couldn't record, I couldn't go on tour. And I was like, you know what? Okay. If I'm going to be broke, then I'm going to be broke and I'm going to be doing only what it is that I'm supposed to be doing. So what I use all this whole Jamie Black experience that you call it, what I use it all for and how I offer it to others is helping them get clear on what their sacred purpose is. And then how can you create a business around that sacred purpose so that you can make money serving your purpose?
Not only for yourself, but for others. In
Yes.
other words, this is a service that you're performing for others as well
Yes.
as yourself.
Yes. So, rather than just playing music for free, doing tarot readings for free, doing astrology readings for free, all those things, which I always have been because that's my love. And then I would go slave my whole life away over here, left me with just being exhausted and no ability to do more with things. I have just found in all the restaurants that I worked in, this was just the problem with everyone. So not only might you be tired from your slave job, but then to come and combat the insecurity, the self-doubt, the fact that you don't have anything going on with your artistic career yet, all of that is such a heavy load, and it usually involves money and people are broke. It just is the first thing to go out the window. It's the reason why people move to Los Angeles is to work on those things. And it's the first thing that goes out the window. And it just continues to be the first thing that goes out the window for 20, 30 years. And then there's this idea of, oh, well, maybe I wasn't supposed to. Maybe
I'm
it's
not
just not
good
for
enough.
me. And there's this secret thing that people think that they're going to get discovered. And that's terrible because you're not. The people who get discovered have been working their ass off for the past 10 years and starving and struggling and sacrificing. And then all of a sudden somebody discovers them because it's already ready and they've been refining, and then that person is helping them in their forward motion. But you can't be doing nothing and all of a sudden, if I'm not performing, if I'm not singing, how's somebody going to discover me? So anyway, that discovery thing for me is just out the window before I even started, because I didn't start playing my writing songs basically until I was 29. I didn't have any dreams of being discovered, and I definitely wasn't interested in anybody being in any kind of control over what it was that I was doing. So I'm a bit controlling.
So the fame game, the celebrity industrial complex that so many of us are held captive in, didn't have that kind of power over you.
But also I didn't want to be an actor, and that does go if you're going to be a successful actor, then fame is coming along with it. They just go hand in hand,
Right.
And it does with music a little bit, but you can make money surviving as a musician, which is what I was trying to do for a long time with just pretending I was going to be really small and just really niche and just only certain people that were into my genre.
You would kick people out of your audience if they weren't cool
I
enough.
was kind of I was kind of that way.
The suit, the tie, out.
Yeah. And anyway, that doesn't really. I mean, that doesn't. That doesn't really work.
That's a luxury.
So I have this energy, right?
It's fantastic. I'm seeing it. And I'm sure everybody who's listening is feeling it. I mean, it's fantastic.
Well, thank you. And it's infectious, and I know that. And so it's not something that I am responsible for. It's something that I came here with. And so I feel that I am responsible to share it with others. It did take me a while to get over my own personal ego and insecurity and fear of judgment and all of that, for sure. But now I'm in a place where I'm like, okay, I can help other people with this. And I can help other people like myself as artists who really have a thing that they really want to do, that their soul really wants to do. I believe that if you want to do it, there's a reason why you want to. It's because you can. For example, you and I seem to have a lot of like similar interests, but what your dream is not the same thing as what my dream is. And that's the case for most of us. Like even if it's similar, we have our own variation of what that is for us. And we don't dream the same things. It's because we're not supposed to do the same things. And so if you have a desire to do it that's separate from an insecurity and an ego thing, right? If you have a true drive and desire to be doing something, to be being someone, it's because that's who you're meant to. You have the blueprints to grow into that. And so I think whatever it is that you're feeling like you want to do or some gift you have to give, the more that you focus on that, the more that you're going to grow, and that you do have the ability to actually generate income doing it. You might have to figure out specifically what it is.
We have new tools.
I know. It's so great.
I mean, what we're doing here, I'll be honest, I have yet to monetize podcasting, but there's a chance, there's a remote possibility, that it could happen and that could cross-collateralize with my stand-up comedy and other things that I have going on. To be a creative person in America, where we don't have grants and we're not, there's very few patrons out there supporting us. In a society that doesn't really honor creative labor, unless it's celebrity, then
They like celebrity, yeah.
But celebrity, you're so creative. But if you're not, there's no real respect for it. And you seem in really clear ways to manifest both sides of this. Is there is the creative spirit, the desire to create, and there's also the warrior spirit. And the warrior spirit really serves the creative spirit, because without the warrior spirit to go fight for what you actually have created, the creativity can just die on the vine without support or remuneration or whatever. So you literally have it manifest in martial arts and your music, but they also, to me, have symbolic value too.
This is why I have the drive, because I am the warrior and not everyone is. And I am here to help. I'm here to fight for you. I'm here to fight for people and helping them. Freedom. It's all about freedom, right? So I'm talking about serving sacred purpose, like serving my mission, but that's freedom. Anybody who's serving their calling, anybody who's living the life that they're wanting to live and sharing their magic and their medicine and their information, that's freedom for people. And if you can add financial compensation into that, because people are willing to pay for things that they want. People shop on Instagram. They shop on all the social media. People just buy shit all the time. There's money to be spent. And I actually believe that people do really want to support each other.
I got to have more faith in that, because I haven't yet reached out to like, hey, subscribe and pay me for this exercise I'm doing on Rebel Without Applause. And, one of my goals this year is to find a way where I can do that and feel comfortable about doing it.
That's one of the things also. And it's like looking at money in a different way. So that's another thing that I talk about too, as well, but it's self-worth. And I could also say that some of this stuff comes from religion too. We are not taught to honor and value what it is that we have, that we're offering. There's some kind of like shame that is involved with it. And there's shame with taking money for things. But like when you go and buy your coffee at Starbucks, like there's not shame that's involved in that. But when it comes to like our personal offerings, there's all this shame about it. And so I really try to help people with that. I think as a society as a whole, it's really a time right now where people are trying to like break through scarcity complex and poverty mentality and stuff that we've got going back like generations past, and really looking at money as energy and money as a tool. You put all your life force energy by default at wherever it is that you're working to just make it physically happen. And then you get money in return. But we don't look at this money as like, this is all my life force energy. And then let me put it into things that I believe in, or there's shame, there's darkness, money is the root of all evil. And that's not true. I'm like, religion is the root of all evil. But anyway.
That's a deep dive we could take.
Yeah.
Is it organized religion, or is it just religion? The power structure is built around religion, like the edifice around Catholicism or, other religions. Is that what's evil, or is it the actual religion?
Well, it's how it's being used, right? So, I mean, we could like dissect the meaning of words and things like that. So, spirituality is not evil, and maybe even like religious practice, right? Ritualistic practice, that in itself is not evil. It's just the way that it's been used, how people have been manipulated, to be controlled, really. Whereas
Social control. Social control of women. I mean, we see it. I was in Morocco. I mentioned this to you earlier, where the guys are got their Nike hats on and their Adidas and their little Michael Jordan basketball shirts and their tank tops, and they're kind of cooking around, and the women are swathed and swaddled in, sarongs, and you can just see the slits of their eyes, and they're kind of looking down. They're not in cafes, and they're just going to markets from house to house in this kind of quietude. And I just, like, I don't want to assume like, oh, their lives are miserable because I'm not in their skin, and maybe there's some comfort in a highly rigid, socially controlled world. But what I felt was like sadness and empathy, and God, I wonder if she's pretty. I'll never know. Like who is she? What is she thinking? It was all mysterious to me as I moved into Morocco and that culture.
I can't imagine. I realize that I'm very fortunate that I live all the way on the West Coast, and that I've grown up here, and that, I mean, I have lived in a place like Santa Cruz. I lived in Northern California.
Yeah.
I've been down here in Southern California since I was 19, which was many years ago, and especially here, there's so much freedom here. You can do whatever you want, whenever you want, be whoever you want, change that up as many times as you want to. And there's really, it's just really a place for exploring all the depths of yourself, and yourself now, and then yourself in 5 years from now, and then who were you like 10 years ago? And it's just, it's allowed, we're really able to be free. And as women, we can be single, we can be gay, we don't have to get married, we don't have to have kids, we don't have to be subservient. We can. There is that here, and I'm really grateful for that, and I'm very aware that just is the circumstance that I happened to,
the social moment we're born in.
Yeah. And so I also try to use that, and that's why I do the work with women that I do, and just to give it back, and that we're not all coming from that. And absolutely there's places in different cultures and different parts of the world where women really still don't have the freedom, and there's so much shame. Women are just so shamed. They're shamed for being beautiful. They're shamed for being not. They're shamed for being sexual. They're shamed for being not. They're shamed for being intelligent. And then
these are all the things I want in a woman.
Well, I would want all those things in a woman
too.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I want. Intelligence and sexuality and creativity and courage.
Well, but this is the thing about what religion can do, is that everybody's being brainwashed, right? Everyone, the men and the women. So you go to like a culture where women are being, covered up and everything, and she might not even want freedom from that. Like she might not even realize, I was having a conversation about modesty with someone who, she's like, I have a hard time around Christmas. I just go off about, why are people saying Merry Christmas to me? Do I look like I'm Christian to you? Like, why are you not saying Happy Hanukkah? And it was in a waitress, and I would always be getting a lot of this. And I'm like, you're telling me Christmas means Christ Mass. You're telling me Merry Christmas, and you don't even go. Like, I try to be nice, and I want everybody to have their own experiences. And, we also live in a place where it's really not very religious here. It's very people are very free and very empowered to be free. And there's a ton of spirituality here. But anyway, so during this time, one of these, this friend, she was just like, you're always going off about all of this. And like, I'm not even affected by any of that. Like, I don't even care. I didn't even grow up with it, but we were having this conversation about modesty. And I'm like, where do you think that modesty comes from? It's not natural for a woman to need to cover up her body, especially in front of like family members or friends, right? Like women, like why why do you think that you need to be modest and you need to like cover up your sexuality? You need to not let anybody see it. It's because you, as a woman, were either the property of your father, right? Because you were the property of the father that was going to be selling you or giving you away to another man. So you needed to not be spoiled by being touched or looked at by any other man. And then when you were his wife, you were his slave. He was allowed to rape you and beat you and all of those things. You had to cook for him, clean for him, have his children, raise them, all of that. And you weren't allowed to hug this man's wife. You're not allowed to touch her. You're not allowed to hug her. You're not allowed to see her ankles, let alone any other part of her body. Like, that's where modesty is coming from. So yeah, you are affected by it. All of us that live even in this very free part of the world in regards to all those things that I was just talking about, the culture was built upon it. It was based upon it. And these are things that we're still trying to like break free from, and just awareness. And even this, I think, you know, I like to share these things because I think that they're thought-provoking. Just think about it. Like, that doesn't mean that you have to be any way different than you're being, but just think about where it comes from.
So I want to just make sure that anybody who's listening has a way to tap into your world, whether it's your podcast, your tarot card readings, your yoga class, your self-defense.
All the things.
This multinational corporation that I'm staring at in the form of this lovely person on so many levels right in front of me. So firstly, there's your website. Let's just go start there.
So please find me at jaimeblack.com.
Okay.
And Jaime is spelled JAIMEBLACK.com. And you're going to start with everything there. So you'll be able to listen to my music. I'm on iTunes. I'm on Spotify. I do have my own podcast. It's called the Silver Lake Priestess Podcast.
Okay.
Silver Lake Priestess is the name of my magical business. It's where I do women's circles and tarot readings and all of this. We do them, out on the earth, but I also have my own temple space that I do readings daily from. So I do readings via phone, video. I'm also just a life coach that's kind of like naturally been part of all of this. So I do my specialty readings are 90 minutes, and I do an entire session with someone where you get tarot, you get spiritual life coaching. There's specific ritual practices that we either do together or I give them to you that you can work on them later based on the things that come out in your reading. It's all for your own personal growth. I'm not into like, oh, this thing is going to happen to you in like 2 years. This person is going to come. Like, how can you even use that information? So it's all very practical. It's personal empowerment. Tarot is a really powerful tool for developing your own intuition. It's based on the Kabbalah, the Tree of Life. But,
But you just said
cards.
something really brilliant and succinct, which is it's a way to develop your own intuition. Just like a musician can practice to hear intervals and thirds and fifths and fourths and changes. It's a practice that develops an awareness of your intuition, which are just the little subtle tremors inside your own heart that are telling you, go left, go right, that's who you are. No, yes, this way. Mm-hmm. Throwing that out.
Absolutely.
That's what hit me that was the sentence that nailed me.
Yeah. It's just the deep inquiry, right? So it's like, okay, well, I don't know what does that mean? And so you sit with it. And so it's a process of asking yourself personal questions.
That seems interesting to me.
Well, we should do a reading.
Okay, we'll do that. You are a very exquisite and interesting canvas, and you are painting on it, which is your own life. So that's the biggest creation in our life is our life, in my view, and yours is a rich one. So, Jaime Black Incorporated, you've got a lot going on here, plus this warrior entrepreneurial spirit that infuses all this passion and interest and energy. Now, for me, having seen you and had just very brief snippets of conversations over the years, this opportunity for me is like, now I know this person and she's fantastic. So thanks for coming in and dropping in on my little movie studio apartment here and joining me on A Rebel Without Applause.
Absolutely. I'm really honored that you would have me on. It's been really fun.
Oh,
yeah,
cool.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, well, folks, thanks for hanging with me and Jaime. And just a reminder Next week, I'm going to be in the heart of the WPL. That's White People Land, meaning Iowa for the Caucasian caucuses, where people will begin the selection process of the next American president, and hopefully we'll find a capable replacement for the PVP. But that process starts in earnest on the 4th of February. I will be in Iowa, Des Moines, to cover the beginning of that process. So hang with me. And until next time, namaste, shalom, and aloha, or nama shaloha.